Christmas Eve, snow fell like whispered prayers over Millfield when Garrett Mitchell saw her. A tiny figure crouched beside the dumpster on Pine Street, her small hands moving through discarded boxes and bottles with the careful precision of someone searching for treasure, not trash. She couldn't have been older than 9, wearing a thin coat that had seen too many winters, but there was something in her movements that stopped him cold. This wasn't desperation. This was purpose. "Daddy, why is that little girl looking through garbage?" 6-year-old Finn asked from the back seat, his voice cutting through the silence that had settled between them since Rebecca died. Garrett's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he watched the child examine a cardboard box with the intensity of an archaeologist discovering ancient artifacts. In the glow of the Christmas lights reflecting off fresh snow, she looked like a ghost of childhood lost, except for her eyes, which blazed with a determination that belonged to someone much older. And that's when she looked up and smiled at them, as if she'd been expecting them all along. The Christmas tree lot on Pine Street had been Garrett's tradition with Rebecca for 8 years running. Even after she passed, even when the familiar ache of her absence made simple tasks feel impossible, he kept coming back. Maybe it was muscle memory, or maybe it was his desperate attempt to maintain normalcy for Finn's sake. Tonight, though, as he pulled into the nearly empty lot with its dying fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across rows of unsold trees, normal felt like a foreign concept. Finn had been unusually quiet during the drive, his small hands pressed against the window as he watched the decorated houses blur past. Since Rebecca's death 18 months ago, their conversations had become careful things, filled with more silence than words. Garrett caught himself studying his son's reflection in the rearview mirror, searching for signs of the joy that used to bubble over during Christmas season. What he found instead was a 6-year-old trying too hard to be grown up, as if happiness might somehow betray his mother's memory. The lot manager, an elderly man named Frank, who remembered their annual visits, waved them toward the back corner where the best trees waited. But as Garrett stepped out of their old Honda Civic, his attention caught on something else entirely. Across the street, bathed in the amber glow of a streetlight, a small figure moved with purpose through the shadows beside Murphy's hardware store. That's when he saw her clearly for the first time. The little girl couldn't have weighed more than 60 pounds, her dark hair escaping from beneath a knitted hat that had seen better days. Her jacket, a faded red puffer coat with a tear along one sleeve, hung loose on her small frame. But it wasn't her size or her worn clothing that made Garrett's chest tighten with concern. It was the methodical way she examined each item she pulled from the dumpster, turning bottles over in her hands, studying cardboard boxes as if they contained secrets only she could decode. Finn pressed his nose against the car window. "She looks cold, Daddy. Is she looking for food?" The question carried the weight of a child who had learned too young that the world could be cruel and unpredictable. Garrett felt his throat constrict. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that some children don't have warm homes to return to on Christmas Eve? How do you maintain innocence while acknowledging reality? Frank appeared beside them, following Garrett's gaze across the street. "That's Emma Santos," he said quietly, his weathered hands adjusting his wool cap. "Been seeing her around here most evenings for the past few weeks. Strange thing is, she's not homeless. Her folks run the recycling center on the other side of town. Good people. Work hard." Frank's voice carried a puzzled note. "Can't figure out what she's up to, but she's not causing any trouble." The information should have been reassuring, but instead it deepened Garrett's confusion. If Emma had a home, if her parents were nearby, what was she doing alone on Christmas Eve, searching through refuse with the focus of someone on a mission? He watched as she carefully placed a plastic container into a canvas bag slung across her shoulder, then moved to the next dumpster with practiced efficiency. That's when she looked up and saw them watching. Instead of the startled embarrassment Garrett expected from a child caught doing something questionable, Emma Santos lifted her hand in a small wave. Her smile, even at this distance, radiated warmth that seemed to cut through the December cold. It was the smile of someone who had been expecting this moment, as if their presence completed some equation she had been solving in her head. "Daddy, she's waving at us," Finn whispered, pressing harder against the glass. "Can we go say hi?" Garrett's instincts warred with each other. Every parenting article he had ever read warned against approaching unknown children, especially in situations that seemed unusual. But something about Emma's demeanor, the confidence in her posture, the purposefulness of her actions, suggested this was far from a typical scenario. And beneath his caution lay something else entirely, a recognition he couldn't quite name, as if this small figure represented something he had been searching for without realizing it. The moment stretched between them across the street, filled with falling snow and the distant sound of Christmas music drifting from the houses nearby. Emma continued to smile, her canvas bag now bulging with whatever treasures she had collected. She seemed to be waiting, as patient as someone much older, for Garrett to make a decision that would change everything. Frank cleared his throat beside them. "Your boy's got a point. Might be worth finding out what she's really up to. Sometimes the most interesting stories come from the places we least expect to find them." The old man's eyes crinkled with something that might have been knowing amusement. "Besides, it's Christmas Eve. If we can't extend a little curiosity and kindness tonight, when can we?" Finn tugged on Garrett's jacket sleeve, his small voice filled with the kind of hope that had been absent for too many months. "Please, Daddy. Maybe she needs help. Maybe we can help her like Mommy would have wanted us to." The words hit Garrett like a physical blow, not because they hurt, but because they rang with such clear truth. Rebecca had possessed an unwavering belief in approaching others with open hands and an open heart. She would not have hesitated. Across the street, Emma Santos adjusted her canvas bag and took a step closer to the sidewalk, still smiling, still waiting. The Christmas lights from the nearby houses cast dancing shadows across the snow, and for a moment the whole scene felt suspended in time, balanced on the edge of a decision that would either remain a curious footnote to their evening or become something much more significant. Garrett looked down at his son, then back at the small figure across the street, and felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was the anniversary of Rebecca's passing approaching, or maybe it was the simple recognition that some moments demanded action over caution. Either way, he found himself walking toward the crosswalk, Finn's mittened hand clasped firmly in his own, drawn by the mystery of a 9-year-old girl who searched dumpsters on Christmas Eve with the focus of someone who had found exactly what she was looking for. The snow continued to fall around them as they crossed Pine Street, each step carrying them closer to answers that would challenge everything Garrett thought he understood about need, purpose, and the true meaning of Christmas giving. Behind them, Frank watched from beside the unsold Christmas trees, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth, as if he had witnessed this exact scene many times before and knew precisely how it would end. Emma Santos stood waiting for them on the sidewalk, her dark eyes bright with anticipation, her canvas bag clutched protectively against her side. When Garrett and Finn reached her, she tilted her head slightly and spoke in a voice that carried far more confidence than her 9 years should have allowed. "I was wondering when you'd come over. I've been watching you watch me for the past 10 minutes. Her grin widened. "Want to see what I found?" The question hung in the cold air between them, loaded with possibility and the promise of revelation. Garrett realized that his answer would determine not just the next few minutes, but potentially the direction of their entire Christmas Eve. And for the first time since Rebecca died, he felt genuinely curious about what came next. The little girl who had seemed so mysterious from across the street now stood before them, real and solid and utterly without pretense. Her smile suggested she had been expecting this conversation all along, as if she had somehow orchestrated their meeting through sheer force of will and patience. Snow continued to accumulate on her knitted hat, melting slightly at the edges where her body heat created small rivulets that caught the streetlight like tiny streams of light. "My name's Emma," she said, extending a mittened hand toward Garrett with the formal politeness of someone much older. "And I think you might want to know what I'm really doing here." Her eyes shifted to Finn, who was staring at her with the wide-eyed fascination of a child encountering something completely outside his experience. "What's your name?" "Finn," his son whispered, suddenly shy in the face of this confident stranger. "Are you really looking for treasure?" Emma's laugh was like silver bells ringing in the cold air. "In a way, yes, but not the kind of treasure most people think about." She looked back at Garrett, and he was struck again by the intensity of her gaze, the sense that she saw far more than a typical 9-year-old should be able to perceive. "The question is, do you have time to see what I've been working on? Because I think it might change how you think about a lot of things." Garrett felt Finn's hand tighten in his own, felt the weight of decision pressing down on him like the accumulating snow. Somewhere in the distance, church bells began to ring, marking another hour closer to Christmas morning. The sound seemed to echo Emma's question, demanding an answer that felt like it would matter long after this strange evening ended. Standing there on Pine Street, surrounded by the quiet magic of Christmas Eve snowfall, with a mysterious 9-year-old girl waiting for his response and his son's hopeful eyes looking up at him, Garrett Mitchell realized he was about to say yes to something he didn't yet understand. And for the first time in 18 months, that felt exactly like the right thing to do. Emma's canvas bag rustled softly as she adjusted it on her shoulder, the sound somehow managing to convey both secrecy and invitation. "Follow me," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had been planning this moment for weeks. "But I have to warn you, what I'm going to show you might not be what you expect." The warning should have been concerning. Instead, as Garrett nodded his agreement and felt Finn's excitement radiating through their joined hands, it felt like the most promising thing anyone had said to him in a very long time. They began walking together down Pine Street, their footsteps muffled by fresh snow, while Christmas lights twinkled overhead like stars that had descended to witness whatever was about to unfold. Behind them, Frank continued to watch from the Christmas tree lot, his weathered face creased in a smile that suggested he knew exactly what Garrett and Finn were about to discover. The unsold trees stood sentinel in their neat rows, their pine scent mixing with the crisp winter air, as three figures disappeared around the corner into the heart of Millfield's quiet residential district. The night seemed to hold its breath, waiting for revelation. And in that suspended moment, with snow continuing to fall and church bells marking the passage of time toward Christmas morning, the stage was set for a truth that would transform not just Garrett and Finn's understanding of their mysterious young guide, but their entire conception of what it meant to give, to receive, and to recognize magic hiding in the most unexpected places. Emma Santos walked between them now, her steps sure and purposeful, leading them toward a destination that promised to answer all their questions while simultaneously raising entirely new ones. The canvas bag bounced gently against her hip with each step, its contents remaining secret for just a few moments longer, like a gift waiting to be unwrapped on Christmas morning. The three of them moved through the snowy streets of Millfield like characters in a story that was writing itself, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air, their combined footprints creating a trail that would soon lead to the most unexpected Christmas revelation any of them had ever encountered. The mystery that had begun with a single observation from across a street was about to transform into something none of them could have anticipated, least of all Garrett Mitchell, who thought he understood what it meant to search for something precious in the most unlikely places. But Emma Santos was about to teach him that sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones we create ourselves. One carefully chosen piece at a time, with nothing more than determination, creativity, and a heart that sees possibility where others see only refuse. Their journey through the snow-covered streets of Millfield continued, each step bringing them closer to a truth that would redefine everything they thought they knew about Christmas miracles, childhood wisdom, and the power of one small person to change the world simply by refusing to accept that anything valuable should ever be thrown away. The night wrapped around them like a story waiting to be told, and Emma Santos, with her mysterious canvas bag and her confident smile, held all the pieces of a revelation that would make this Christmas Eve unforgettable for everyone involved. The only question remaining was whether Garrett and Finn were prepared for what they were about to discover about the true meaning of finding treasure in the most unexpected places. As they walked deeper into the residential heart of Millfield, passing houses decorated with twinkling lights and glowing nativity scenes, the anticipation built with each step. Emma's purposeful stride never wavered, her canvas bag continuing to bounce against her hip, carrying secrets that would soon spill out like gifts tumbling from Santa's sack. The snow continued to fall, muffling their footsteps and creating a cocoon of intimacy around their small procession. And somewhere ahead, in a destination known only to Emma Santos, waited the answer to the question that had started it all. What could a 9-year-old girl possibly be searching for in dumpsters on Christmas Eve with such focused determination? The truth, when it finally emerged, would prove to be more beautiful, more inspiring, and more transformative than either Garrett or Finn could have possibly imagined. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and Christmas Eve in Millfield was about to reveal one of its most precious secrets, hidden in plain sight, and waiting for the right moment to change everything for a grieving father, his young son, and the remarkable little girl who had been orchestrating this meeting all along. Emma led them down Maple Avenue, past houses where families were gathered around dinner tables visible through warm, lit windows. The contrast between the cozy domestic scenes and their own journey through the cold night created an almost dreamlike quality to the experience. Finn pressed closer to his father's side, his curiosity overriding any lingering uncertainty about following a stranger through the snowy streets. "Are we almost there?" Finn asked, his voice small in the vastness of the winter night. Emma turned back toward them, walking backward for a few steps, with the confidence of someone who knew these streets by heart. "Just around the next corner," she said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "And Finn? When you see what I've been working on, I want you to tell me what you think it means. Sometimes kids understand things better than grown-ups do." The statement struck Garrett with unexpected force. How long had it been since he had asked Finn what he thought about anything important? How many conversations had he avoided because he feared his son's questions would lead to discussions about loss, about absence, about the way their family had been forever changed? Emma's casual assumption that a 6-year-old might possess wisdom worth seeking felt like both a challenge and an invitation. They turned the corner onto Elm Street, and Emma finally slowed her pace. She stopped in front of a modest 2-story house with a small front yard dominated by a large oak tree whose bare branches created intricate shadows against the snow. But it wasn't the house that caught Garrett's attention. It was the small structure tucked beneath the oak tree, barely visible in the shadows cast by the streetlight. "This is it," Emma announced, her voice filled with the pride of someone unveiling a masterpiece. She led them through the front gate and across the yard, her footsteps creating a path in the unmarked snow. As they drew closer, Garrett began to make out the details of what appeared to be an elaborate fort or workshop constructed from materials that looked suspiciously familiar. The structure was about the size of a large garden shed, but it had clearly been built entirely from recycled materials. Cardboard boxes formed the walls, reinforced with careful duct tape seams. Plastic bottles had been cut and arranged to create windows that allowed glimpses of the interior. Aluminum cans hung from the bare oak branches overhead, creating a soft, chiming sound when the winter breeze moved through them. Emma produced a small flashlight from her canvas bag and illuminated the entrance to her creation. "Welcome to my workshop," she said, her voice filled with quiet reverence. "This is where I turn trash into treasure, but not the kind of treasure you can keep for yourself." She pulled back a curtain made from repurposed fabric scraps, revealing the interior of her remarkable construction. The flashlight beam swept across shelves made from salvaged wood planks, each one lined with carefully organized materials: cleaned plastic containers, flattened cardboard pieces, bottle caps sorted by color, lengths of string and wire wound into neat coils. But it was the finished products displayed on a central table that made Garrett's breath catch in his throat. Dozens of small toys, games, and crafts filled every available surface. Cars made from toilet paper tubes and bottle caps. Dolls crafted from old socks and stuffed with newspaper. Board games created on cardboard bases with bottle caps for game pieces. Puzzle sets cut from cereal boxes and decorated with magazine pictures. Each item showed evidence of careful construction, creative problem-solving, and attention to detail that would have impressed any professional toy maker. But more than their craftsmanship, they radiated something else entirely: love. Every piece had been made with the kind of focused care that comes from understanding exactly who will receive it and why it matters. Finn stepped closer to the table, his eyes wide with wonder. "Did you make all of these?" he whispered, reaching out to touch a small truck constructed from a milk carton and wooden wheels. Emma nodded, her confidence giving way to something more vulnerable. 53 toys so far," she said. "I was hoping to make it an even 60 by Christmas morning." She looked up at Garrett, and for the first time since they had met, he saw uncertainty in her expression. "They're for the kids at Millfield Community Shelter. A lot of them won't have any presents under the tree tomorrow morning." The statement hit Garrett like a physical blow, not because it was shocking, but because it was so simply, matter-of-factly generous that it reframed everything he thought he understood about this remarkable child. Emma Santos wasn't searching through dumpsters out of need or desperation. She was mining the discarded materials of her community to create Christmas miracles for children who had even less than she did. "But Emma," Garrett heard himself saying, "why are you doing this alone? Don't your parents know?" A shadow crossed Emma's features. "They know I collect recycling materials, but they don't know about this part. Mum and Dad work so hard just to keep our recycling center running, and they're always worried about money. I didn't want them to think they had to spend money on toys for other kids when we barely have enough for ourselves." She gestured toward her workshop. "Besides, this way I can make exactly what each kid needs. I've been watching them when Mom takes me to volunteer at the shelter. I know Marcus loves trucks, and Sarah collects anything purple, and little Tommy is afraid of the dark, so he needs something that glows." The level of thoughtfulness, the careful observation and planning that Emma's project represented, left Garrett momentarily speechless. Here was a 9-year-old child who had identified a need, developed a solution, and executed a plan with the kind of systematic dedication that most adults would find challenging. And she had done it all in secret, driven by nothing more than the recognition that other children deserved to experience Christmas magic. Finn tugged on Garrett's jacket. "Daddy, these are better than store toys. She made them special for each kid." His voice carried a note of awe that Garrett recognized as the sound of a child discovering that the world contained more beauty and kindness than he had previously understood. Emma beamed at Finn's assessment. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd understand," she said. "Store toys are nice, but they're the same for everyone. These toys know who they're made for. They have stories built right into them." Garrett found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. "Emma, this is remarkable. But how are you planning to get all these toys to the shelter? And how can we help?" The offer surprised him, even as he made it. He hadn't planned to get involved, hadn't consciously decided to transform their curious evening into something more significant. But standing in Emma's workshop, surrounded by evidence of her extraordinary heart and determination, the question of whether to help felt less important than the question of how to help most effectively. Emma's face lit up with the kind of radiant joy that seemed to illuminate the entire makeshift structure. "Really? You want to help?" She looked between Garrett and Finn as if they had just offered her the most precious gift imaginable. "I was going to pull my wagon to the shelter in the morning, but there are so many toys now, and some of them are kind of fragile." Finn stepped forward with the kind of decisive action that reminded Garrett powerfully of Rebecca. "We have a car," he announced solemnly. "And Daddy's really good at wrapping presents. We could help you deliver everything tomorrow morning." The spontaneous offer, made with 6-year-old certainty and generosity, created a moment of perfect clarity for Garrett. This was what Rebecca would have wanted them to do, not just the helping, but the recognition that sometimes the most important gifts come from the most unexpected sources. Emma Santos had created something beautiful and meaningful from materials others had discarded. But more than that, she had created an opportunity for Garrett and Finn to rediscover their own capacity for purpose and connection. "Emma," Garrett said, crouching down to her eye level, "would you be willing to let us be your partners in this project? I think Finn and I might be exactly what your workshop has been missing." The smile that spread across Emma's face was brighter than all the Christmas lights in Millfield combined. "I was hoping you'd say that," she admitted. "I've been watching you two at the Christmas tree lot for weeks, and you always looked like people who understood about making things special for other people. I just had to wait for the right moment to show you." The revelation that Emma had been observing them, waiting for the perfect opportunity to reveal her project, added another layer of wonder to an evening that had already exceeded every expectation Garrett had held for Christmas Eve. This remarkable child had orchestrated their meeting with the patience and wisdom of someone far beyond her years, recognizing something in them that they hadn't recognized in themselves. Standing in the glow of Emma's flashlight, surrounded by toys made from love and recycled dreams, Garrett felt something shift inside his chest. For the first time since Rebecca's death, he felt genuinely excited about tomorrow. Not just about Christmas morning, but about the opportunity to be part of something larger than his own grief, something that honored the values Rebecca had tried to instill in their family. Finn was already examining the toys more closely, asking Emma questions about how she had constructed each one, his natural curiosity and enthusiasm fully engaged. Watching his son interact with Emma, seeing the way her confidence seemed to unlock something joyful in Finn that had been dormant for too long, Garrett understood that this evening had already given them both something invaluable. Emma Santos had been searching through dumpsters on Christmas Eve, but she had been looking for materials to build bridges between herself and children she had never met, between need and generosity, between what the world discards and what love can transform. And somehow, in the process, she had also built a bridge between a grieving father and son, and their own capacity for hope, purpose, and connection to their community. The snow continued to fall around Emma's workshop, adding to the magic of a moment that felt suspended outside of ordinary time. 3 people who had been strangers an hour ago now stood together as collaborators in a Christmas mission that promised to transform not just the mourning of 53 children at the Millfield community shelter, but also the way Garrett and Finn understood their place in a world that still held room for miracles, especially when those miracles were crafted by the determined hands of a 9-year-old girl who refused to accept that anything valuable should ever be thrown away. The evening that had begun with a simple observation from across a street had evolved into something neither Garrett nor Finn could have anticipated, a partnership with a remarkable child who had shown them that the most meaningful Christmas gifts are often the ones we create ourselves, with nothing more than recycled materials, careful attention to others' needs, and hearts open to the possibility that magic can be found in the most unexpected places. As Emma began explaining her plans for Christmas morning delivery, her voice filled with excitement about sharing her creations with their intended recipients, Garrett realized that this Christmas Eve had given him and Finn something precious. A reminder that healing often comes through helping others, that purpose can emerge from the most unlikely encounters, and that sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to continue the work of building connections, creating joy, and refusing to let the world's discarded possibilities go to waste. The workshop under the oak tree had become a place where trash transformed into treasure, where solitary grief became shared purpose, and where a chance encounter on a snowy Christmas Eve revealed itself to be exactly the kind of miracle that happens when people open their hearts to unexpected possibilities and trust that the most meaningful gifts are often the ones we never saw coming. Emma Santos had been expecting them all along, and now Garrett understood why. Because some meetings are written in the stars, orchestrated by love, and timed by the universe to arrive exactly when they're needed most. This Christmas Eve had delivered them all to precisely where they belonged, in a workshop built from recycled dreams and filled with toys that would carry love from one heart to another, creating connections that would outlast the holiday season and transform everyone they touched. The night was far from over, but already it had given them everything they needed to make Christmas morning magical for 53 children, and in the process, to rediscover their own capacity for wonder, generosity, and hope. Emma's canvas bag sat empty now, its secrets revealed, its treasures spread across the workshop table like stars waiting to light up the darkest corners of Christmas morning. And in that moment, surrounded by evidence of what one determined child could accomplish with nothing more than recycled materials, and an unshakable belief in the power of love to transform anything into something beautiful, Garrett Mitchell finally understood what Rebecca had been trying to teach him all along: that the most valuable treasures are the ones we create for others, and that Christmas miracles happen when we stop looking for magic and start making it ourselves, one small act of love at a time. The three of them stood together in Emma's workshop as the snow continued to fall, partners now in a mission that would make Christmas morning unforgettable for dozens of children, while teaching all of them that the best gifts are often the ones we never expected to give, created from materials we never thought to value, by people we never imagined we'd meet. This Christmas Eve had transformed them all into believers in the kind of magic that doesn't require anything supernatural, only the willingness to see possibility where others see problems, and to act on the radical belief that every discarded thing, every lonely person, every broken heart contains the potential for something beautiful, if only we're brave enough to pick it up and see what we can build together. Emma Santos had been searching through dumpsters on Christmas Eve, and what she had found was exactly what she had been looking for all along: the raw materials for miracles, and two people ready to help her turn those materials into Christmas morning magic for children who needed it most. The truth that had left Garrett stunned wasn't just about Emma's remarkable project, but about the realization that sometimes the most profound gifts come to us through the most unexpected channels, carried by the most unlikely messengers, and delivered exactly when we need them most. The workshop under the oak tree held more than 53 handmade toys. It held proof that love multiplies when it's shared, that creativity flourishes when it serves others, and that the most meaningful Christmas celebrations happen when we stop thinking about what we want to receive and start focusing on what we have to give. Emma had shown them that the true spirit of Christmas lived not in expensive gifts or elaborate celebrations, but in the simple recognition that everyone deserves to feel valued, remembered, and loved. As they began making plans for Christmas morning, their voices mixing with the soft chiming of aluminum cans in the winter breeze, Garrett realized that this chance encounter had given him and Finn something invaluable, a new understanding of their place in the world, a renewed sense of purpose, and most importantly, a reminder that Rebecca's love lived on, not in their memories alone, but in their willingness to extend that love to others, especially when those others seemed to have been forgotten by everyone else. The night that had begun with a simple question from a 6-year-old boy had evolved into an answer that none of them had expected but all of them needed. That families can expand to include anyone willing to share in the work of creating joy. That Christmas miracles are usually homemade, and that sometimes the most precious treasures are found not in stores or under trees, but in the generous hearts of people brave enough to see possibility where others see only problems. Emma Santos had been waiting for them all along, her canvas bag ready to reveal its secrets, her workshop prepared to welcome new collaborators. Her Christmas mission expanded to include a grieving father and his young son who had forgotten how to hope until a 9-year-old girl reminded them that the best way to heal a broken heart is to use it to help mend the world, one carefully crafted gift at a time. This Christmas Eve in Millfield had delivered exactly what each of them needed most. Emma had found the partners she had been hoping for, Finn had discovered that the world still held magic worth believing in, and Garrett had learned that purpose and healing could emerge from the most unexpected encounters, transforming not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone their generosity would touch. The snow continued to fall around them as they made their plans, each flake adding to the beauty of a night that would be remembered long after the last present had been unwrapped, because it had given them all something more valuable than any gift that could fit under a tree. The knowledge that they belonged to each other now, partners in the ongoing work of creating Christmas miracles for anyone brave enough to believe that the world's discarded possibilities could be transformed into something beautiful by nothing more than love, creativity, and the willingness to see treasure where others saw only trash. Emma's workshop stood as testament to the truth that had stunned Garrett Mitchell on Christmas Eve, that sometimes the most extraordinary gifts come from the most ordinary materials, crafted by the most unlikely people and delivered exactly when they're needed most. The little girl searching through dumpsters hadn't been looking for help. She had been preparing to give it, one recycled dream at a time, teaching everyone she met that the true spirit of Christmas lived not in what we could buy, but in what we were willing to build together from whatever materials we could find.